Hare Krishna. How are you? And I'm happy to be here. Let me just adjust the camera. So I have this question here about veganism in yoga. Because, we talk a lot about, there's a lot of talk of veganism in yoga. But, is that the tradition? And you have spiritual masters, like, for example, the great spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And Dejan brought this question here. He would say like this. Let me just read the question here for you. So he would say like this. A lot of devotees emphasize the importance of dairy in our diet, and I'm just curious about what you guys think about it. Are dairy products needed in order to grow spiritually, or is it more like an extra plus if you have access to ahimsa milk? So there was this idea in Prabhupada's terms. He would use this, he would say the need for milk to develop the finer brain tissues to be able to progress in yoga, to be able to progress spiritually. Now, that's really interesting way of putting it. And of course, this is a spiritual master writing, in the last century, who was born in the 19th century. And the way he wrote it, the way he spoke about it, kind of makes sense. In terms of science, though, what's really happening is that the milk component to be able to have finer brain tissues is, of course, B12. So B12 is actually necessary. And if you have a vegan diet, of course, most vegans know this, but if you have a vegan diet, you have to supplement B12, because without the B12 supplement, you can, not immediately, but after a while, you can start having some negative effects in terms of brain function, and also, of course, bodily function, which is in terms just in general of your body. So it's absolutely necessary for your well-being. But of course, B12 supplementing is something very modern. So now we can be vegan. That's why in the past, you really never had like a fully vegan society in the past. There was no such thing. And in the path of yoga, you can see in the Krishna tradition, what you really have is a focus on milk products. So, Krishna was a cow herder, famously. He had the gopis, and gopis means cowgirl, and the gopas mean cowboys. So Krishna was in a cow herding community. And so traditionally, it was lacto-vegetarian. That's the traditional diet. You'll see in the spiritual text, like Srimad Bhagavatam, that some renunciates, sannyasis, they would live on a cup of milk only. They would have this vow, like, I'll only have 1 cup of milk a day or something. So even like a milk only diet, you'll see in the scriptures. So definitely, like, and of course all the previous spiritual masters, they would all be lacto-vegetarian. But it's just that the reason why we talk about veganism now is that the world is different now. And there are 2 differences which affect this choice. First, you have this very violent milk industry, right? And so cows are grossly mistreated, and they're given hormones, and they're killed quickly. And so that's not very nice. So as conscientious people, we try to avoid having such products, because we just don't want to be involved in the killing of cows, because it's very un-yogic to be involved in the killing of animals, especially cows. So we don't want to be involved with that. And so that's why, and then the other thing is we have technology to do the B12 supplementing, so that's why it's I recommend the vegan path. You don't have to do it, of course. Everything is like whenever you're ready for it. It's like, it's not an obligation. Never think of it like that. But in terms of end goals, a yogi should have the end goal of being vegan at some point. And it just makes more sense. Again, you don't have to be super strict about it. Once in a while, you okay, you get a little milk thing here, it's okay, it's not the end of the world, but just in general, and that's actually good for your health as well. So it's good for the planet in terms of environmental impact, because milk production, cows in general, have a heavy environmental impact. So it's good for the environment. It's good for you, because mostly when we say people are lacto-vegetarian, most times that means they eat cheese, right? And cheese is, and I'm just like horrified about just how difficult it is to give up cheese. Cheese is highly addictive. And I remember in the beginning, like for a year, because it took me like a whole year trying to become vegan, and I'd be having these cravings. You have cravings for like ice cream or cheese, you really you want it, like it's like some weird craving. And then after like a whole year, I felt like, oh, hey, I'm not having those cravings anymore. Wow, what a relief. So it takes a long time, and they still keep popping up. So it's really hard, but it's not very good for you, cheese, right? Nobody would recommend eating cheese, right? I mean, it's not a healthy thing in general, so because it's got so much fat. So it's good for your health as well, So, and then there's ahimsa milk, which was mentioned here in the question, right? And in Dejan's question, there's ahimsa milk, and that's a thing that's happening. It's still very hard to find, but it is a thing, and in some places you can find it depending where you live. If you like, if you're in the UK, you'll find it. Maybe some places in Switzerland, you'll find it in some places, but it's very hard to find. And the ahimsa milk, and I mentioned that in my book, The 3T Path. Ahimsa milk is that milk that's taken from cows where there's a pact, where there's like an agreement, where that cow will be kept very nicely until her natural death. So there's no abuse. The cow is very nicely maintained with lots of love and care. And then they take the milk out, and there's no harm at all for the cow taking some milk out. People have this idea that, but then the calf won't have enough milk, but that's not even true for humans, what to speak of cows. Even a human mother, she can give as much milk as is requested, because her body just produces more milk, and if there's less requested, her body just produces less. It's the same thing with cows. So there's no issue of the calf going hungry, so that's silly. But yeah, so you can have that kind of milk. So that's a very nice option as well. You can have milk, ahimsa milk, and then you can have cheese and stuff made from that. So that's an option. That's, if you're going to have milk, that's certainly the way to go. But if that's not an option, you can have a little bit of milk, or if you can, just try to be vegan. So that's what it is. So what we really need, so just to translate that saying about having milk for finer brain tissues for spiritual development, that just means B12, really. And you have to be careful, not only with just B12, but of course your health in general. And the whole idea is to really cultivate better health in general, so you can have a better spiritual life and live better as a yogi. So that's the question we had here. If anybody else wants to ask a question, go ahead. You can send me the question or leave a comment, and I'll love to answer it too. Hare Krishna.